someone works in a more negative climate, or there's a culture that is, conflictual or going through a lot of changes, it's more likely to pull for the Achilles heel part of our personality. Under stress and in conflict, our Achilles heel, even if we've corrected for it most of the time, is more likely to show up. So for me, say as a people type, I might be more likely to take things personally. I might be more likely to just say, why bother with a conflict? It's not going to solve anything anyway. I'll just avoid the conflict, which is what people types oftentimes do until they get so frustrated they blow up. Mostly, that's not the way I handle conflict, but under a lot of stress, it could be. So in a climate that's kind of stressful, you could find more of the Achilles heel coming out. So I'd like you all to think about that. One of the ways that PeopleMap and Meyers-Briggs and all of those kinds of things are used to work with organizations. I talked about this model last time, but I'm counting on Ingrid that you forgot. This is from the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And again, you're not a team, you're a group of teams. There are a bunch of teams within the division. But I think Michael Jordan said something like, talent wins games, teamwork and practice wins championships. And if you think about, even like in a football game, and I'm more of a soccer, my son always played soccer, so I'm more of soccer than football, but think about a football game, and if the quarterback makes the all-star team, or the special teams is just, out of this world in terms of how they do, in terms of the extra point, or whatever else the special teams do. It doesn't matter if the whole team loses the game. If overall you're losing games every week and you're not winning, then it doesn't matter how well one department does or one group does. So PeopleMap and Myers-Briggs and all those kinds of tools help with the 5 dysfunctions of a group or an organization or a team. And the first dysfunction is the absence of trust. This is a trust-building exercise because everybody is being open and saying something about who you are, what your strengths are, what your vulnerabilities are, and how you can get better at it. The second dysfunction of a team is difficulty with conflict. And one of the things, paradoxically, about conflict is that people aren't always arguing a lot amongst themselves, but there's kind of like staleness, flatness, absence of conflict, so conflict goes underground. People just, maybe don't show up, or they avoid, or various things that doesn't lead to a resolution of conflict. Lack of commitment. When we have trust, and when we can deal with the conflict directly, if Dorothy and I could talk about directly where she and I see things differently about what we want to accomplish, and we can be mindful of each other's kind of personalities and styles, what she needs to be successful, what I need to be successful, then even if we don't end up agreeing, probably in the long run we can both be committed to the outcome because we both feel like we really respected, understood each other's point of view, and we either found a compromise, a different way, something like that. So absence of commitment. Then it's accountability. And accountability, oftentimes in an unhealthy or less healthy organization, is all put on the boss. Whoever is the boss, the head of the department, the head of the division. But in a healthier organization or healthier team, people can kind of hold each other more accountable. You said that you were going to get me this by Friday, and I really needed it to get it out, and you didn't get it to me, and that's a problem for me, and what can we do next time, or when could you get it to me? That is me not going and complaining to Cindy. I can't believe Dorothy, she's not a task person, and I don't know who you are. And she didn't get this to me. That would be not dealing with it directly and kind of being accountable. And then when people can hold each other accountable, they're much more likely to get the big results that they're looking for, the organization is looking for. Last time I talked about positive psychology and how PeopleMap was part of the positive psychology movement and really looking at using our strengths instead of always focusing on deficits and what we do wrong. And so it is. And another thing that PeopleMap is part of, it's part of that whole movement since kind of Daniel Goleman in the late 90s on emotional intelligence, EQ. Some people call it EI. I really don't like calling it intelligence at all. I like to think of it as more of a set of skills. And okay, some of us are more naturally gifted in anything, you know. I could learn to play the piano, but unlike Mozart, who wrote his own concerto at 4, I will never play piano like that. So we all have some skills in this emotional intelligence, but hopefully we can keep getting better, and the PeopleMap helps us with that. So Goleman said there were basically 4 kind of quadrants, or 4 main things we need to know in terms of emotional intelligence. This is self-awareness. Okay, so understanding our type. What type am I? I'm a people type and a leader type, least preferred free spirit, and, you know, kind of so-so on the task. So understanding how that shows up for me, that self-awareness. Self-management. If I'm an extroverted people type, how do I manage my talkativeness? Okay. In a setting like this, it works out pretty well because I have to talk, but in a meeting, it's not so good always. And in fact, I've developed strategies like, I talk with my hands a lot, you may have noticed that. So I sit on my hands in a meeting if I've already made a comment and I feel like I should be quiet and just listen and let other people, especially introverts, have an opportunity. I'll put my hand right under my leg because it's like my reminder to myself, you already spoke, you know, you have to be quiet. So this is other awareness. How well do we read and tune into others? You know, their nonverbals, their expressions. And in the PeopleMap, like today, we'll try to learn some more strategies for understanding what are some clues for if someone's a people type, or someone's a leader type, someone's a free spirit. We did the cruise exercise last time, where half of you were travel agents and half of you got to buy a cruise. Not really go in it, but buy it. Sorry. And so you were trying to figure out from the conversation, what type of person is this? What kind of clues are they giving me about what they really need? And the best way to have our Achilles heel not come out is to get our needs met. And when our needs are met, we're not stressed out. When we get our needs met, our Achilles heel doesn't come out as much. So we need to learn to tune into others. And this sounds kind of bad, but it's other management. How do we meet other people's needs? How do we interface with other people? And a good piece of today is going to be about communicating with types that are not like us. It is, as people said to me, well, I say it in a lot of workshops, but last time here, you guys said, it was those of you who played a personality that was different than your own type in the role play, said it was really hard. If you're not a free spirit, it's really hard to think like a free spirit. You know, if you're not a people type, it's kind of hard to think like one. It really is. So how do we learn how to communicate to other people in ways that they feel that they're understood and heard? So with introversion extroversion, how many people here already knew whether you were an introvert or extrovert? Okay. A lot of people. Great. What we really need to know about it is a couple of things. One is that a lot of people confuse it with shyness, and introversion and shyness are two really different things. You could be introverted and shy, you could be extroverted and shy. And that, you know, they're almost like independent variables. In the Meyers-Briggs language, they say it has to do where we get our energy, right? So that introverts get more energy from being by themselves and being alone. Extroverts get more energy from interacting. So in a library, a student who's extroverted might spend some time in their carrel alone and then start getting really antsy and restless and go find someone to talk to. I can't believe it, but where my son is going to be a rising senior at Bucknell in engineering, there's a Starbucks in the library. Now that seems bizarre to me, but you know, for those extroverts, they can go and chat and get a cup of coffee in the library. So the Myers-Briggs people thought about it like handedness. You're either left-handed or right-handed. Very few people who are ambidextrous. But again, we know now that probably most people it's on a continuum. It really helps when we can be mindful of how someone's natural preference is. Like at work, everybody has to be more extroverted whether they are or not. But if we know, then you can be more mindful and more respectful, about that. My husband, again, is an introverted free spirit, and honestly, early in my marriage, I would make myself look at my watch unobtrusively. I wouldn't do it really obviously, like, I'm okay. It seems like it's been an eternity since I asked the question and he hasn't said anything. It's really only been 20 seconds. Okay, you could really wait for an entire minute. But it's like kills me to wait for a whole minute. I'm like, but he needs more time. It's like a lot of times if I interrupt and I say, he's like, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about what you said, and of course the danger is with the free spirit, he thinks about what I'm saying and then it goes off to some other thing that's related to something else he's thinking about when we don't get back to my question.
It's called selective hearing.
So it is a process, but I think the other thing is even Carl Jung with the Meyers-Briggs said that people move towards the middle, particularly as we age. If we have been more extroverted, we might find and discover that more introverted side of ourselves. If we've been more introverted, we might become a bit more extroverted. And one thing I did say, forgot to say at the beginning, especially for people who didn't come to the last training, preference is not competence. We can be behaviorally competent, skillful, and we should become competent. That's the whole point of this. We can develop our task strengths if we're not task. Knock on wood. I left Michelle off the thing. I spelled names wrong. I, did things. I can keep getting better at the task part, but it will never be a natural preference for me. So an introvert could develop, like your wife, some skills at dealing with people and be very effective. People might not even know that she's more introverted, right? So just think about, Jill saying, how it plays out in your teams. Are we giving people who are more introverted enough space to be able to make a comment, to be able to say something? Again, they might be reserved and shy, they might just be introverted. Extroverts also they think out loud a lot of times, and so they're not going to be good just sitting in their office thinking about the problem that you presented. They're going to need to have the back and forth with you, and that might get really tedious to people that are not people types or free spirits, or not extroverts, but that's part of how we process. Most organizations, they are oftentimes like the CEO, they're in charge, because they are really good at seeing the big picture and the detail, getting things done. So they can have, in terms of that Achilles heel, a little bit the command and control kind of style, of not always, if they don't correct for the Achilles heel. And like those of you who were at the presentation or workshop last time saw my little step ladder. Transformational strengths, really successful people of any type have transformed their Achilles heel so it doesn't come out as much. So you might have a leader task type who seems like a real people type. The VP of HR at a hospital that I work with a lot, I didn't know he was leader task type until he took the PeopleMap and we talked about it. He said, I've worked really hard at my people skills, at being more patient, being more mentoring, but it's what comes more naturally. Yeah. Leader people, again, people leader, a little bit higher percentage in this group, 13% versus 9%, but it's a relatively rare type because in some ways, like task-free spirit, it's kind of like some opposites, Ironically, my leader type often does come out at home, like when I found out, that my son is a free spirit leader, my daughter is a free spirit leader, and my husband's a free spirit people. It's like, okay, just give up. I am herding cats, and we have 3 cats. So that's a lot of free spirits in one household. So it just helped me so much to not get so frustrated with why, they've got to all do things their own way, and I needed to make some more room for that. But it's a rare type because it has those two opposites. We also have some of the Achilles heels of the leader type of being impatient. I see that coming out sometimes even in my emails. I will write an email back that sounds like, after I read it over, it sounds like a bullet point of da-da-da-da-da. And then I go back in and put in So nice to hear from you. I'll put it at the end. I hope we have a great weekend. But I didn't write that at first, and I might have sent it out like that, where it could be really misread as all I care about is, the result. These people are often drafted into leadership. They're not usually the ones who are saying, I want to be a leader. And my best example for that is I was truly elected president in 2007 of the Central New York Psychological Association. Hopefully I've made progress since this time, but I was accidentally elected to being president. It was back in the day before there was a lot of electronic voting, and so there was paper ballots. And I was on the board as a secretary of the board for 5 years. I felt like that was good. And the president said to me, people types can have trouble saying no, boundaries, we're not direct, we're indirect. So the president at the time said, would you be willing to run for president? And I said, sure, but I'd like to wait till my kids are a little bit older. That was the wrong answer, because sure, but I'd rather wait. He heard your preference is that you'd rather wait, but but you're willing. I meant, yes, I will in the future, but right now I don't want to run because my kids are still young. And I got a ballot in the mail with my name on it for president. And it was a competitive election against another guy who I just was not a people type. I knew he was not extroverted, he was not a people type. I just knew, even if he'd make a great president, that he wasn't going to get elected. So I did get elected and was the accidental president. Fortunately, it wasn't a huge amount of time or anything like that, but it was a really big learning experience about, how to correct for your Achilles heel for your people type. That was prior to my doing a lot of the coaching training and the PeopleMap for sure. But it's a great example of how you kind of get pulled in to leading as a people leader type. One group I did of the leadership group of a small health organization, there were 3 doctors. There were 3 doctors that were the owners of this organization. One was Leader Free Spirit, one was Leader People. He did the management of the whole team. The Leader Free Spirit did all of the reaching out and partnering with other, kind of creating joint ventures, marketing, getting new business. And the last one was Leader Task, and he did all of the management of the accounting and finances. And they had self-selected that way, that they were all 3 leader types, but Free Spirit, Task, and People, depending on what their role was. That was just like amazing to me. Task, Free Spirit. This group has a lot bigger percentage than you would expect, a Free Spirit, Task, Free Spirit. And these people are very unusual because they kind of have, again, these opposite traits. And they often work together in a really unique way for each person. So when you get together with your Task, Free Spirit, Task group, I hope you can kind of articulate for us how it works for you. One group I was with, a nutritionist, she was a Task Free Spirit, and she said, I write down a list of all the things I want to do for fun on my time off, and I always do everything on my list. So that's how it worked for her. Another guy who I worked with recently at a credit union, he is Task Free Spirit, and he says that he needs to have all of the kind of parameters around him really settled, but then he likes to be really flexible, creative, and do his own thing. Over 400,000 people have experienced PeopleMap training. These individuals, their teams, and organizations have experienced immediate and lasting benefits, including improved communication, better teamwork, increased productivity, and greater well-being. Contact me today to find out more about how PeopleMap training and Insight Business Works can help your team and organization.